safely to our destinations. This we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a small order of business. President Gallo, I'd like to ask that you administer the oath of office for Dr. John Noble this morning. At our January meeting, we announced that Dr. Noble had been reappointed by Governor Jeff Landry to our board. However, we were unable to administer the oath at that time. If you would, please step down in front of the dais and please proceed with that administration. It's certainly an honor to serve with one of the finest of the Republic of Calcasieu. Dr. Noble, if you would share a few comments at this time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a true pleasure to serve with all of you great people and all the great university staff and university presidents, and looking forward to the next 6 years.
Thank you, and congratulations again. We have minutes for the January 16th meeting. If I could have a motion, a second, to approve the minutes for that meeting at this time. Moved by Mr. Perkins. Second by Mr. Stevens. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Today we'll meet as a committee of the whole, with the exception of the special committee on tuition and fees, which will meet following the board meeting this morning. We need a motion and a second to conduct business in this manner today. Moved by Dr. Noble, second by Mr. Busada. Any questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Ms. Pierre, if you would please address the items under the academic and student affairs agenda.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. We have 10 action items on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee agenda and 1 informational item under new business. Dr. Janine O'Rourke, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, will provide the report. Dr. O'Rourke.
Good morning, Supervisor Pierre, Chair Romero, President Gallo, members of the board. It's great to see everybody today. We do indeed have 10 items for your consideration and 1 informational item that I'll go over quickly when the agenda is completed. Agenda items E1 and E2 are requests from McNeese State University. E1 is a request for approval of a 5-year strategic plan and revised vision, mission, and core values and organizational statements. The university did a deep dive into strategic planning process, which incorporated input from faculty, staff, administrators, students, and community members. What resulted is a plan which established 4 main goals that will guide the work of the institution over the course of the next 5 years. E2 is a request to convert the Master of Arts in Psychology to a Master of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis. The university currently offers an ABA concentration within the MA in Psychology, which completes on average 10 students annually, and they would like to go ahead and offer the degree in the Master of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis and terminate the existing MA in Psychology. A teach-out program will be in place to existing students that would like to complete the current MA in psychology rather than transition to the new program. And those students would complete by spring of 2027. Agenda items E3 and E4 pertain to Nichols State University. E3 is a request to offer a Bachelor of Arts in Social Work. The university currently offers a concentration in social work within the Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. 32 students are currently pursuing that concentration. In order to help them meet the needs of social service workers in Louisiana and beyond, with a particular emphasis on rural southern Louisiana, the area that Nichols services, Nichols would like the existing concentration to become a standalone degree program. Item E4 is a request to offer a Bachelor of Science in Engineering Technology. This is a degree program specifically designed through collaboration with regional industry to address current and emerging workforce needs in the state's energy sector. This initiative is highly supported through grant funding and industry partnership to increase the supply of highly skilled workers in the southeast region of Louisiana, as well as across the state. Items E5 and E6 pertain to Northwestern State University. E5 is a request to revalidate the university's mission, vision, and core value statements. The board last approved these statements in February of 2020, and revalidation is needed at this time to be in compliance with the regional accrediting body standards. E6 is a request to award an honorary doctorate of humanities to Mr. Jerry Atkins Jaff Fielder II at this spring's commencement. Northwestern would like to honor Mr. Fielder's distinguished 35-year career with Willis Knighton Health, as well as for his support and encouragement of Northwestern, in particular in support of their DNP and nurse anesthesia program. Agenda items E7 through E10 are from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. E7 is a request to award an honorary doctorate of arts to Mr. Richard Dickey Landry at this spring's commencement. UL Lafayette would like to honor their alumnus for his contributions to the arts for over 7 decades in music, performance, and as an internationally exhibiting painter and photographer. E8 is a request to offer a Bachelor of Arts in Recording Arts. Since fall of 2021, the university has offered a concentration in recording arts that has grown from 20 students to 59. Because of the demand from students and industry, the university would like to convert the concentration to a standalone degree. This would be a very unique offering here in the state of Louisiana, and existing resources for the concentration will be used to implement the standalone Bachelor's of Arts. And E9 is a request to offer a Bachelor of Science in Cardiopulmonary Science. The proposed program has been designed to offer comprehensive professional training in key health science disciplines, including respiratory therapy, cardiovascular sonography, cardiovascular technology, and pulmonary rehabilitation. The program proposed by UL Lafayette, which will begin with the respiratory therapy track first, will address the growing demand for such healthcare services in the Acadiana region and beyond. And the last item for UL Lafayette is E10, and that's a request to offer a Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Computing and Informational Sciences. Such a program will educate graduate students on the use of practical application of computer principles, concepts, and technologies to solve day-to-day business and industry problems. The program proposal received favorable feedback from an external reviewer which stated that UL Lafayette is well positioned to expand its existing degree programs in informatics, computer science, and computer engineering with its proposed PhD. He went on to say that there is a strong need for a program of this nature here in our state. Under other business, lastly, I would like to make members aware of updates made to the board's PPM regarding placement requirements into entry-level, college-level English. Existing policy notes that a score of 19 or above on the ACT English subscore was required for a student to be placed in a gateway English course. Since the Board of Regents adjusted minimum requirements, our policy has been modified to align with Regents policy. This is simply an update for the board. No action is necessary. And as we move forward through 2025, one of my goals is to review all policies that fall in the academic affairs space to ensure that they're efficient, they're up to date, so you'll be seeing more of these over the course of the next few meetings. And Supervisor Pierre, that concludes my presentation on all items. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O'Rourke. If no one requires any further clarification, I would like to recommend items E1 through E10. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Noble moves. Second by Supervisor Davison. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Any comment from the public? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Thank you. That motion is approved. Is there any other business to come before the committee at this time? Okay, hearing none, the next item will be athletics.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre. Dr. Noble will proceed with the athletic committee.
We have 11 items on the athletic committee today. All are consent items. Mr. Bruciane will provide a brief overview by campus.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noble. We do have a number of contracts, and I'll just say the names for brevity in the school. Items F1 to F4 from Louisiana Tech. Scott Batera, head coach of women's volleyball. Abby Pollard, assistant volleyball coach. Brian Johnson, director of men and women's track and field and cross country. Then they're submitting the following assistant coaches: Dan Sharp, Tony Franklin, Teddy Veal, Lorenzo Joe, Sam Carter, Josh Crease, and finally Carlton Buckles. Item F5 is from McNeese, approval of a contract for Bernard Matt Viator, head football coach. Item F6 from Nichols, Thomas Rabacki, head football coach. Item F7 from Northwestern, approval of contract for Benjamin Cazada, head coach for women's volleyball. Items F8 through F10, University of Louisiana at Lafayette, approval of contracts for Michael Dismoro, head football coach. Thomas Savell, head men's tennis coach. James Neighbors, director of athletic performance for football. And Jorge Munoz, associate head football coach. And then the following assistant coaches: Dennis Thomas, Michael Galani, Matthew Bergeron, Tim Leger, George Barlow, Stephen Former, Timothy Scott. Finally, item F11 from University of Louisiana at Monroe, requesting approval of the head football coach contract for Brian Vincent. Those are all the consent items I have, Dr. Noble.
These agenda items have been reviewed by staff and are recommended for approval. As always, if any member has a question or wishes to discuss any of the items, please let me know. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? If no one requires further clarification of the consent agenda items, may I have a motion and a second for approval of items F1 to F11? Motion by Supervisor Russell, second by Supervisor Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Motion passes. Do we have any other business at this time? If not, this concludes the business of the athletic committee. The next committee is audit.
Thank you, Dr. Noble. Mr. Peterson, no chair audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two items on the audit committee agenda. One is consent and one is discussion. Mr. Janae will give us an overview.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peterson. Item G1 is from Nichols, requesting approval of an amended annual internal audit plan for fiscal year 24-25. At the time that the audit plans were submitted and approved by the board last June, the internal audit position at Nichols was vacant. And since then, Dr. Clune has hired a internal auditor as of January 16th. And the new internal auditor, with approval by Dr. Clune, requests that the audit plan for Nichols be amended to the audits that are detailed in the executive summary that were placed online for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you, Mr. Janae. Members, this item has been reviewed by staff and is recommended for approval. Are there any questions or discussion needed from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve this consent agenda item? So moved by Dr. Letherman. Seconded by Mr. Davidson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the item passes. Mr. Janae, you'll take us through the discussion item.
Item G2 is for Universal Within a System. It is our report on internal and external audit activity for the period of November 15, 2024 through February 16, 2025. Each board member has received access to each of the listings of internal and external reports that have been completed by various auditors since the last board meeting. Also included in that summary are internal audits that are currently in progress, and also a follow-up timetable to follow up on those audits that had recommendations that need to be cleared. Again, this is a report only, and no action by the board is necessary. And those are all the items I have, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Janae. Is there any discussion on the item? Board members have any questions for Mr. Janae? Thank you, Mr. Janae.
You're welcome.
Is there any other business before this committee at this time?
I don't have any.
Thank you. That concludes the business of the audit committee. Mr. Chairman, I believe facilities is next.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Davison, if you would please address items for facilities.
We have 5 items on the Facilities Planning Committee that are all on the consent agenda. Mr. Janae is going to provide an overview of these items as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Davison. All of the executive summaries and the supporting documentation was posted online that had to notice specifics. And I wanted to point out that we have a number of namings today on rooms or whatever, and those have been vetted in accordance with our board rule, and the presidents have submitted appropriate justification. The first item is H1 from Nichols. Request to name the covered practice facility Go-Bear All Practice Facility at Shaw Sports Turf Manning Field. Item H2 from Northwestern to name the choral rehearsal room in the new Fine Arts Building, the Dr. Burt Allen Choral Rehearsal Room. Item H3, Universal Within at Lafayette, requesting authorization to acquire by donation both landing buildings known as Pecan Island High School, located at 28902 West Louisiana Highway 82, from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette Foundation to benefit the university. Upon approval by the board today, the university will begin to secure all the appropriate approvals from various agencies, and also it's pending receipt of the level 1 environmental report. Item H4, Universal Within at Lafayette, request to name classroom 336 located on the 3rd floor of the new engineering building, which is near Madison Hall, to the Richard, Daniel, and Larry Ann Hereford classroom. Request to name the top floor of the new baseball clubhouse, the Hancock Whitney Premium Pavilion, and finally to rename the exterior premium entry of Our Lady of Lord Stadium to become the Jim and Ruth Montcus Premium Entry. And finally, H5, Universal at Monroe, to rename the Raymond Hurd Tennis Stadium to Raymond Hurd Tennis Stadium at the Dwight D. Vines Tennis Complex. And again, all these items were for naming followed the board rule. And those are all the consent items I have, Mr. Davis.
All right, all of these consent agenda items have been reviewed by system staff and outside legal counsel and are recommended for approval. As always, we'll take any questions or discussion from the board. Any comments from the public? All right, can I have a motion and a second for approval of these items? So moved, Mr. Myers, and second, Mr. Brusada. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any other business at this time? If not, that concludes the Facilities and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, and Mr. Busada will proceed with finance.
We have 9 items on the Finance Committee agenda. All are consent items. Mr. Eddie Mesh and Ms. Ashley McIntyre will provide a brief overview of consent items.
Thank you, Mr. Posada. Item I1, Grambling State University's request for approval to extend the existing partnership with Southern University to continue the Bayou Classic through 2028. This cooperative endeavor agreement between Grambling State University, Southern University, Grambling State University Foundation, and Southern University Foundation provides for the terms and conditions between the parties for broadcasting the annual Bayou Classic. The main requirements of the agreement are as follows. The agreement requires the university to provide football teams, bands, cheerleaders, and other university personnel to participate in the ancillary activities of Bayou Classic, and the foundations are required to reimburse the universities for their costs. The foundations guarantee the monetary requirements for the broadcasting of the event, and the foundations exclude the universities in the state of Louisiana from any liability associated with the event. The universities share in the proceeds derived from the tickets pro rata based upon the number of tickets sold by each university. The foundations retain the net proceeds resulting from the Bayou Classic ancillary activities. The foundations must use the proceeds for scholarship awards and other educational purposes that benefit the universities. The original agreement had a 4-year term ended on December 31, 24. The First Amendment to the Cooperative Endeavor Agreement seeks approval from the board to extend the agreement for an additional 4-year term through December 2028. By extending this agreement, GSU and SU will continue to benefit from the financial and brand building opportunities associated with the Bayou Classic, securing long-term corporate sponsorships, media partnerships, and engagement opportunities for students, alumni, and supporters. This stability will allow both universities to execute strategic growth initiatives, enhance fundraising efforts, and strengthen stakeholder relationships. I2, Nicholls State University's request for approval to assess the tuition rate of $375 per credit hour for its undergraduate, $475 per credit hour for its graduate online programs, as allowed by Act 426 of 2013 regular session. Act 426 of the 2013 regular session grants authority for the board to assess tuition fees for students enrolled in an academic program offered entirely through distance education. Nicholls was granted approval in 2012 to begin its Nicholls online program. The university received approval from the Board of Supervisors in 2014 to charge a tuition rate of $275 per credit hour for its undergraduate and $385 for its graduate online programs. No adjustments to the tuition rate have been made since 2014. The university has determined the current tuition charges assessed by other institutions in the University of Louisiana system generally range from $375 to $400 for undergraduate and $475 to $500 for graduate online programs. These rates are significantly greater than the current charges paid by Nicholls students for similar programs. Nicholls requests board approval to assess students enrolled in its undergraduate online programs a tuition rate of $375 per credit hour, and to assess students enrolled in its graduate online program a tuition rate of $475 per credit hour. The proposed rates are competitive with other distance education programs and are responsive to the costs associated with providing distance education courses. These changes would become effective with the fall 2025 semester. I3, University of Louisiana Monroe's request for approval to allow for a student referendum to increase 5 current student self-assessed fees. The University of Louisiana Monroe Student Government Association proposes that a referendum be placed for a student vote for each of the following proposed student self-assessed fee increases. Increase the student success fee from $22 for the fall and spring and $11 for summer to $25 for fall and spring and $12.50 for summer. Increase the Student Government Association fee from $8 for fall and spring and $4 for summer to $12 for fall and spring and $6 for summer. Increase the Campus Activities Board fee from $20 for fall and spring and $10 for summer to $23 for fall and spring, and $11.50 for summer. Increase the Spirit Group fee from $4.45 for fall, spring, and summer to $9.45 for fall and spring, and $6.95 for summer. And finally, increase the athletics facilities fee as follows. Increase the fee in FY '26 from $20 in the fall and spring and $10 in the summer to $75 in fall and spring and $37.50 in the summer. In FY '28, increase the fee from $75 in the fall and spring and $37.50 in the summer to $100 in the fall and spring and $50 in the summer. In FY '30, increase the fee from $100 in fall and spring and $50 in the summer to $125 in the fall and spring to $62.50 in the summer. As student elections anticipated to be held in spring '25, approved fees would be assessed beginning with the fall '25 semester. It is further understood that should the proposal be rejected, then current fees shall remain unaltered. I-4, University of Louisiana System's request for approval to establish LEQSF endowed professorships, endowed first-generation scholarships, and endowed superior graduate scholarships and endowed chairs. The Louisiana Education Quality Support Fund provides for grants to be awarded upon receipt of private donations for the establishment of endowed professorships, first-generation scholarships, superior graduate scholarships, and endowed chairs. Management boards are required to authorize the establishment of the endowments prior to submission to the Board of Regents for matching funds. The following campuses have submitted endowments to the board for establishment. Louisiana Tech University has submitted 2 professorships. McNeese has submitted 1 professorship. Northwestern has submitted 1 professorship, 1 superior graduate scholarship, and 1 chair. Southeastern has submitted 2 professorships, 3 first-generation scholarships. ULL has submitted 3 professorships and 3 chairs. ULM has submitted 5 professorships and 2 first-generation scholarships. And UNO has submitted 35 first-generation scholarships to the board for approval. Item I-5. University of Louisiana System's recommendation for approval of a contract extension for professional services with DeQuier, Clark, and Adams. The Louisiana Attorney General has revised its policy for legal services contracts. Boards and commissions are now required to provide minutes showing the board's approval of legal contracts and its parameters when submitting contracts to the Attorney General. DeQuier, Clark, and Adams provides legal services to the board, the system, universities, and advises the board, system, and universities of any legal matters that may arise during the normal course of operations. DeQuier, Clark, and Adams does not include legal services related to tort or workers' compensation covered by the Office of Risk Management. The current year contract with DeQuier, Clark, and Adams has a term of 1 year from July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025. The contract extension would provide the same legal services and at the same rates for an additional year term from July 1, 25 to June 30, 26. The total of all sums payable under the contract, including fees and reimbursement of expenses, shall not exceed $625,000 and shall be billed in accordance with the Policy and Procedure Manual 50.
Item I-6 is the system's discussion of fiscal year '25 second quarter financial reports and ongoing assurances. The first report is a comparison of the operating budget versus actual revenues and expenses through the second quarter ending December 31st, 2024. Overall, revenues collected through the second quarter are 65% of total budget, which is expected since the majority of tuition and fees have been collected during the fall semester. Overall, expenses collected through the second quarter are 53% of total budget, which is also expected since the majority of scholarships were awarded during the fall semester, which is the reason for the higher variance for the scholarship and fellowship and other charges expenses. Additionally, operations and maintenance of plant and operating services expenses are both over 60% of budget through the second quarter, and this is usual mostly because of the timing of the Office of Risk Management payments made. The next report shows the auxiliary and athletic revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balances projected through the end of this fiscal year. I've also provided a report that shows this information broken down for each campus. As of December 31st, campuses expect approximately 260 million in revenues, 305 million in expenses, and 27 million in net transfers in, which results in an overall current year operating deficit of approximately 18 million and an ending negative fund balance or deficit of approximately 41 million. This projection for the current year and the cumulative deficit grew by about 1.5 million from the projection reported in the first quarter by the campuses. The next report presents each campus's current year athletic deficits for fiscal year 24 compared to the projected current year deficits for fiscal year 25. The projected current year deficit for athletics is still 26 million, and the auxiliary reserves are continuing to be depleted to cover those deficits.
The second quarter reports some institutions continue to use additional financial support to their operating budgets by transferring funds into the operating budget, by moving expenditures out of the operating budget, and by charging operating fund type expenditures directly to other institutional funds to balance their operating fund budgets. With both operating fund budgets and athletic budgets increasingly dependent on support from other institutional funds, institutional reserves are being depleted and placing institutions in unsustainable positions. In your materials is a document titled Second Quarter Schedule of Projected Unrestricted and Restricted Fund Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance Reserves. To create a concise presentation, restricted and unrestricted revenues, expenditures, and transfers are combined, but resulting fund balance reserves are separated to show respective beginning, ending restricted and unrestricted reserves separately. The report shows 6 campuses are projecting combined revenues falling short of revenues and anticipating using reserves. The report also shows 4 campuses are projecting that unrestricted reserves will be negative at year end, and 3 campuses are projecting total reserves to be negative at year end. And 1 campus, UNO, is projecting an operating fund budget deficit and negative total reserves. Campuses with negative reserves will need to reduce expenditures and or find additional revenues during the next 2 quarters of the fiscal year to put their universities in sustainable positions by year end. When planning for next year, it's important to note that current year revenues include over 17 million of one-time line item appropriations that might not be available next fiscal year. Should these one-time funds not be provided, institutions will be further charged to balance their budgets. The main takeaway from the second quarter is that some institutions are dependent on other institutional funds to balance their operating fund budgets, and without this support would have operating fund budget deficits. In addition to the operating fund, athletic fund deficits are also using the same institutional resources and are having a considerable and growing impact on institutional sustainability. Also, institutions should begin assessing the impact of loss of one-time funds when preparing for their 2026 budgets. This is report only and no action by the board is necessary.
I-7 is the system's financial status of alternatively financed projects for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2024. Alternatively financed projects are facility construction projects that are financed and constructed by campus-affiliated nonprofit corporations like the foundations and facility corporations. Universities lease their land to the nonprofits, and the nonprofits finance and construct the facilities and then lease the completed facilities back to the universities for their use. In many cases, the nonprofits will incur debt to finance these projects, and campus facility lease payments finance the bond payments. Semi-annually, campuses report the financial status of these projects to the system. Campuses report results of operations and debt coverage ratios of their projects. A debt coverage ratio of 1.0 would indicate that operations funded just enough to make those debt payments with no excess funds. These projects are reported as either student housing or non-student housing projects. For fiscal year 25, campuses budgeted student housing revenues of approximately 80 million, expenses of approximately 31.7 million, annual debt obligations of 35.7 million, and a debt coverage ratio of 1.35. The actual debt coverage ratio as of December 31st was slightly higher at 1.56. The McNeese, ULM, and UNO housing projects all had a ratio of 0.6 at December 31st, and this is because the majority of their annual debt service payments had been made during the fall. Campuses did not express any concern regarding their individual student housing projects. The non-housing projects would include student unions, parking garages, recreational facilities, athletic facilities, and similar projects. In total, campuses budgeted non-housing revenues of approximately 26.3 million, expenses of 9.5 million, annual debt obligations of 12.4 million, and a debt coverage ratio of 1.4. The actual debt coverage ratio as of December 31st was 1.9 for all campuses. The Nichols Parking Project had a debt coverage ratio of 0.9 as of December 31st, and this is because Nichols had collected the majority of their revenue for this project as of December 31st, and so their total annual debt service payment is reflected. According to Nichols, they are on track to meet their budgeted ratio of 1.2. The ULL Baseball Stadium project had a debt coverage ratio of 1.0, and this is because the ULL Foundation reimburses the debt service for this project, meaning that reimbursement of the debt service payment is the only revenue, and the debt service expense is the only expense for this project. Campuses did not express any concern regarding their individual non-student housing projects. All management certifications are available for review in the system office. If individual university reports are needed, they are available upon request, and this is a report only and no action is necessary. Item I-8 is the system's request for approval of payments made by nonprofit organizations to employees of the University of Louisiana system during fiscal year 2024 in accordance with provisions of Louisiana Revised Statute 173390F. In your materials is a schedule of payments made by nonprofit organizations to employees of the system for the fiscal year ended 24. Louisiana Revised Statute 17 requires that any single payment of over $1,000 made by a nonprofit organization to or on behalf of an employee or officer of a public higher education institution or management board be approved in writing by the appropriate management board in accordance with written policies and procedures. In accordance with system policy, we are requesting that the board approve the schedule of payments made by nonprofit organizations to university employees during fiscal year ended June 30, 2024. Individual campuses submit quarterly reports of these payments, and these have been compiled into the schedule that you've been provided.
Item I-9, University of Louisiana System request for approval to authorize campuses to establish high-cost program differential tuition and to increase student fees in accordance with Act 790 of 2024, and to have the Special Committee on Tuition and Fees review individual campus plans to ensure the plans follow the act prior to implementation of the increases. Act 790 of 2024 regular session authorizes higher education management boards to establish differential tuition for high-cost programs identified by the Board of Regents and to approve student fee increases. Act 790 limits the sum combination of differential tuition and fee increases to a maximum of 10% over consecutive 2-year periods. The system requests approval to authorize campus to establish the high-cost program differential tuition and to increase student fees for FY26 in accordance with Act 790 of 2024, and to allow the Special Committee on Tuition and Fees to review and evaluate individual plans to ensure they comply with Act 790, and to approve the plans if they comply with the Act. The committee would report its findings to the board at its next scheduled meeting. This completes the consent items, Mr. Basada.
Thank you. Consent agenda items J1 through J5, J8, and J9 have been reviewed by the board staff, and the staff recommends approval. Please let me know if any member has any questions or wish to discuss any of the items.
Mr. Basada, I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Eddie, for all of that. Your commentary on item 6 was really, really sobering. That's not where my question is, but It was really sober. I just want to understand, I think, item 9 a little bit better. Can you give an example of the types of programs, high-cost programs that would be targeted for these types of fee increases?
Yes, sir. There was a listing by the Board of Regents. They did a study to determine what programs would be. Computer science, engineering, would be examples, College of Business too. Those colleges have more costs, lab fees, pay higher for faculty because that's what the market demands.
Mhm.
So this would assist institutions to provide monies for those increased costs.
And do we have any sense of how many of our universities will be bringing forward these plans?
All 9 will be. All 9 institutions will
9
be
will
bringing.
be.
Yes, sir. They'll be presented to the special committee.
And Mr. Chairman, what we're authorizing in 9 is that all of those plans would be approved in the special committee, and the full board would never see the full, well, none of that's brought to full board discussion. It all happens. We're going to authorize the committee to represent the board in making those decisions.
That's correct, Mr. Peterson. We'll have a consideration presented and, obviously a motion that those tuition and fee increases will be considered by the committee in an effort to assure compliance with the act.
Okay, thank you.
There any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had a question about item I3. It was the request from ULM to allow for a student referendum. I guess my question is regarding, I guess, the increase in the student athletic fee. I did get some information. I thank you. You provided some information on the student athletic fee that's charged, I guess, at each one of the universities, and ULM's is among the lowest now. So I guess increasing their request to increase the athletic fee would bring them back up to, I guess, closer to where most of the universities are within the 3-year. But I'm concerned about the jump in the first year. We're asking students in the fall of 2025 to pay an additional $55. And in the other years, an additional 25 and then 25. I guess I just have some questions maybe from the university on, do they think the students would be willing to go for that? And also, because it's in athletics, each of our universities have had a problem with deficits in athletics. I'd be interested from the university if they have any plans to reduce their expenditures, since they're getting more income now. I'm just really concerned about the increase in the deficit. While we're giving them extra money, they're getting extra money. Are there any plans to reduce the athletic deficit? So
Dr. Berry?
did you get any of that information?
Dr. Berry, do you want to comment on that?
Okay.
If you would come up, Dr. Berry. Sure. Mr. Brown, maybe turn your mic on. I do appreciate your diligence in reviewing this consideration.
Good morning.
Oh, sorry. Good morning, President Gallo and Chair Romeo and all members of the board. Thank you for seeing us today. I also like to thank Dr. Berry and Dr. Fields for coming and support us. My name is Gabrielle Thomas, and I'm the Research and Judicial Affairs Department Head for the Student Government Association.
My name is Lawson Marchant. I am a pharmacy senator on SGA and also a member of school.
Yes, I'm Blake Guerrero. I'm also a senator for the College of Arts, Education, and Science, and I was one of the students who wrote this referendum.
I'm John Bartwell, Director of Athletics.
To give a little background on the student athletic fee portion of it, back in October, we did have Mr. Hartwell come to us and present to us a motion where he requested it was $10 per credit hour. to the Senate that he wanted us to look into and possibly get it to the student body. And as RJA, our members of the Senate decided to refer it to a committee, which was the RJA committee, and further investigate and report their findings or any changes that they wanted to make to his original proposal at another meeting. And we sat on it for a couple months and brought it back up in January, I believe. And our new referendum is the one that you see today that was written by a very own senator who took the initiative to write it. And he was also part of our committee who did the investigating and see what numbers fit where. And we all came together and decided that along with the athletic fee, including these other fees would also better the community of ULM and their organizations as a whole, rather as just looking at the student athletic fee alone. And I believe that for your question with the jump of $75, when we heard the original proposal of $10 per credit hour, the Senate members did have a lot of opinions and a lot of scares with that alone being a huge jump. And in our meeting, we did compromise on having a gradual increase. And when we brought it to Senate, they were able to debate it. A lot of them were still a little hesitant with the jump because of all the financial things that are going on right now within the government and their aid possibly being removed and stuff. But there are a lot of things that were in place. We got reassurance from Dr. Fields that with the government stuff, the students will still be okay with their financial aid, along with the student senators being more than happy to do this gradual increase than the $10 per credit hour. So they had a better outlook on that, and a lot of them feel as though they'd be able to achieve that and get that to better sit with the student body.
Okay, all right. So I'm glad you did, I guess, come to some consideration, some compromise, I guess, on that. But you said your student senate debated it and decided to go along with it. Did they have I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. You can finish.
No, I was just gonna say, do you know if they got input from the student body? Is the student body? I know you're asking for a referendum to bring it to a vote, but was there
Right, so
any?
officially, we would bring it to the student body once the referendum does get passed. However, as school is, you know that it's going to get out there and people talk amongst themselves, because we told the Senate, you do not have to keep it quiet. You're more than welcome to go fill out the opinions of the other students. And they heard about the first one first, obviously. So when they heard about the second one, they still had the same realization, like, yes, we still need this for our school, but we would feel more comfortable with the gradual increase. We had a lot of students who absolutely just didn't want any part of it. And then we have a lot of students who also look at it as it's increasing the better of ULM as a whole, with all the things that it's going to be touching on campus, with the mental health, with the, I believe, with the spirit groups, the SGA cap, student success fee. Like with these increases along with athletic fee, we're really going to be targeting those people who come to ULM first. And the student success fee is really targeted towards the freshmen, getting them involved on campus, getting them to see like all the help that ULM can provide to them. So a lot of students were more welcoming with the referendum that we showed them.
Okay, yes.
I don't quite know proper procedure, so I do apologize. But
You're good.
I just wanted to add on to her if y'all have a second.
Yes.
Absolutely.
As a prominent member in Greek life, I am part of a fraternity and also many other organizations on campus. The athletic fee is based around school athletics, football, baseball, basketball, and it's also going to go towards our facilities. Our facilities are 10 years, 15 years behind date if you look at other campuses. Although that would benefit our athletics greatly, it still falls under their category. But it also helps our Greek life, our intramurals. We all use the same facilities. ULM is not a huge school. We don't have separate facilities for it. So we do share the same fields. This brings a lot of interest to Greek life. We have very prominent Greek life on campus based off our population. But I can just say, as a member of Greek life, we use them a lot, and this benefits to us. And just through Greek life, all fraternities, all sororities, they have the understanding that this jump will allow them to better participate in these at this level. So it's not just athletics, it's the entire campus that this fee is going for.
Okay.
And then not to mention the students who attend these games and like get to see the athletics. It's no secret that our football team has been performing very well this year, and the games, they've been more active. The students have been coming more involved. Along with that, you do have the football players who are balancing, academics as well as playing, and then also getting social media scrutiny if they mess up here or there. So I know this athletic fee is also going to help with the football players mentally, more staffing for them with tutoring, more staffing with them with mental health, just to make sure like they can do both, just make sure they're taken care of.
Okay, and one other question for you guys. How are you advertising, I guess, or how are you communicating to your students on campus what's going on with this particular vote that you're asking for?
As far as communication goes, I think we want to hold a bunch of town halls if this were to get passed through here. We've been working with the Hawks Committee about that as far as just getting the word out to students. Just giving them the opportunity to vote.
Okay,
I know our goal is to reach out to at least 80% of everyone on campus. We're gonna have the town halls. We have 2 of them, if this were to pass, scheduled for a Tuesday, which is the 25th, to take the place of an SGA meeting, which people from all over the student body and community are welcome to attend these SGA meetings. And then we also have one on the 10th of March that we'll have. And we're also planning on reaching out to Greek Life, having a dinner with them and letting them know all the information about this, because for SGA, we're not approaching the students and being like implying them to vote yes or no. Our job is to just get it to them and give them as much information as possible for them to make an informed decision. And we'll also have marketing, we'll have social media posts, we'll give them all the information that they can have to hear from us as much as possible before they vote on it. It would be in April of the 2nd and 3rd.
what percentage of your student body usually votes in the spring elections? You're doing this in the spring.
I don't have the numbers for last spring, but going off of the ones that I've commissioned this year, homecoming was about 25%. We had about 1,000 people vote. And we've been trying to increase that steadily from past years.
Okay, all right. And then the only other question I had was on, I mentioned concerned about, our ongoing deficits in, I guess, in athletics in general. And through the material I saw that revenues, I guess, were like, anticipated 19.6 million, but expenditures 20.9 million. So we're still talking about, even with this, operating at a deficit. Is the university, or what has the university been doing to reduce its athletic deficit?
Right. That's a great question. And I was fortunate enough to be here. First off, let me say, I want to thank our SGA leadership for helping bring this forward. Obviously very important to us. I've been the athletic director. Actually, Saturday will be 2 years. I know a handful of you know this, but in my previous life, I was actually a university auditor and I was a CPA too. So very, very attuned to some of the financial concerns through all of higher education. Obviously, athletics plays a part in that. And this is just one piece of the puzzle for us to become more financially less dependent on the university, if you will. And our budget, roughly $21 million, just to give a little context. We compete in the Sun Belt Conference. The next lowest budget in our league is $30.5 million, which is Southern Miss. So we've got a huge gap, and we're not, under the pretense that we're going to close that gap immediately. We're just trying to help our student athletes, 385 student athletes across 17 teams, get more competitive. And the student fee, which in the first 2 years would generate about $560,000 for us, is but one silo of revenue streams that we're increasing. We've got a new multimedia rights partner. We've increased philanthropic giving significantly. Obviously, the world of NIL is trying to take a bite out of that, but we're balancing that. So just one piece of the puzzle, but we are very budget conscious and want to make sure that we are as close to balanced as we can. One other piece, and I know my counterpart from McNeese is back there, Heath. One of the things that we've done, we just had our second meeting about 3 weeks ago. We've got all 10 Division I schools in our state meeting on a quarterly basis now, the athletic directors, to try to, we all deal with the same issues. Some of them have different dollar amounts, but we all have the same issues, and trying to work as a group to help curtail as many expenses as we can and to increase revenue streams.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to thank the gentleman next to you. I missed your name again, but Blake.
Lawson.
Okay, all right.
Lawson, Blake. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for pointing out that intramurals or whatever plays a part in that, because my question is going to be, what does the average student, why would they be concerned about increasing that much at that quickly, the athletic fee? But yeah, obviously you pointed out that it is a benefit to other students and Greek life and all of those. That's all the questions that I had.
Before we conclude comments, Dr. Berry, please, with your student advocacy posture as a leader, please step up to the microphone. We'd like to get a comment from you. I know the pleasure is seeing three of ULM's finest here to present to us. We welcome your feedback and thank you for taking the time to do that. But I think it's important you're present, staying in support of.
Thank you, Chairman. You saw me back there smiling. Yeah,
like that.
I'm very proud of them, very much appreciative of their work and their willingness to come to the table to help us get our student athletes and our student body where they deserve to be. They've done a fantastic job. You know, they're creative, problem solvers. Supervisor Pierre, your point was perfect. You know, that big jump was going to be an issue, but they wrestled with it and they came up with an alternative that will work for our entire campus. And I just want to thank them for their creativity and problem solving and their service to our entire student body. And also want to thank our athletic director. You know, I didn't have a chance to see the reports that were just presented, but I've shared with you previously that, yeah, we went from over a $4 million loss last year to a $1.5 million loss this year. There is a lot of efforts going on in raising external money. We just hired a fantastic fundraiser development officer that has significant experience. He hit the ground running. We know that we've got to find external partners to help us achieve our mission. And John has done a phenomenal job in bringing the right people to the university with the right level of experience to get us where we are. So thank you for considering this referendum. Thank you for considering giving our students the opportunity to share information and vote on it on campus if it's in their best interest. So thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask President Berry a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Your students have done an excellent job in laying out the engagement on the fee increases. Kudos to you guys and all the information you provided. Can you talk a little bit about the similar engagement you've done on on the item 9 that you might be presenting before the committee and those two fee increases?
I'm sorry, I don't have item 9 with me. Is that the tuition?
The high cost tuition, yeah. I'm talking about the engagement, not the plan, but just the engagement on campus with students.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
And so most students know that I'm everywhere on campus. I eat in the cafeteria or the sub almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
And students will sit down with me and have a conversation. Students come to my office and we just sit and talk. And so we talk a lot about cost of higher education. We also talk a lot about resources that are available in our foundation. We just announced the availability of our private scholarships. The applications for those were through the roof this time. We've made significant changes in messaging to get that out to our students, that there are available resources from private donors. So I'd like to think that the students know who I am and they feel comfortable walking up to me and having these conversations. And we care deeply about those students and we'll do whatever we can if this creates a burden. When we present this afternoon or after this meeting, certainly there are measures in there to help students who have financial difficulty in meeting any new increases that occur. We serve some amazing students and we want to make sure that each one of them can be successful and that finances is not a barrier.
But have you engaged them on the plan that you're bringing forward?
So I have not engaged the SGA, but we have talked to students in an informal way. And not knowing whether or not the fees will pass, you know, I think it might be a little inappropriate for me to share with them the exact plans, but I think the student body understands that this is going on. They just don't know exactly what's going on yet.
Yeah. I just want to point out for the board that these are two very stark differences in examples of engagement and info being provided to an audience about a fee increase. What we're requiring of the students or applauding of the students is they've done a bunch of engagement with young people to try and give them the info that they'll need to make a wise decision. The same isn't happening on the other on the other issue, Mr. Chairman. And look, I intend to vote against this item, but I have to vote against the entire consent agenda. Of course, I'm not opposed to Grambling and Southern partnering on Bayou Classic and the other items in this agenda item. But Mr. Chairman, something doesn't just, it's not clicking for me. We've heard from an earlier report from Mr. Mesh. We know campuses are in trouble. We know that. But the strategy to lean on and place the burden on students and us not have clear information about what that burden might be feels like a bridge too far. So just, I just want to say that it feels like a bridge too far. And we need, I just think, a deeper sense of what are the expected outcomes, burdens on students, and that I'm not understanding why that can't be in view for the full board to make a decision about approving plans that campuses may bring. I'm not.
Thank you for your sentiments and comments, Mr. Peterson. We can certainly take items individually. While we have a consent structure, we can separate items and vote individually if that's the pleasure of the board.
Yeah.
I certainly am for that.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to remove 9 from the consent agenda.
And I think, Mr. Brown?
Well, there's a motion made. I would like to stay on track and go with I3 and offer some commentary if I can, and then we can move down the agenda.
Sure.
If you would withdraw just for a second so I can get to I3. I
Item
plan to take I3 individually, so.
Okay.
As the student member, I feel an obligation to support my fellow students. I have been in collaborations with Ms. Maloney, who's the student body president at ULM, and I obviously commend you three for making the long drive down here and giving such a well-documented proposal today. I also just want to bring attention to the full board. I know that the student athletic fee is the one that we are looking at with the most scrutiny right now. But let's not forget that additionally here, we have a student success fee. So that goes directly into workplace placement, student retention, first year experience, counseling, mental health, all this different stuff. With a student government association fee that directly allows the leaders on campus to do their jobs and represent the 8,000 students at their campus. We have a campus activities board fee that allows the activities to host more programs on campus and give students an opportunity to feel at home and to do things on campus. So I know that the student athletic one is the one we're looking at the most, but let's not forget we also have 4 fees up for consideration right now, which directly add to the value of a student's life on their campus. So let's not forget that. Now, obviously, I think we should also recognize our responsibility here. Our job is to allow or disallow a student referendum. And I think it would be wrong for us not to allow the 8,000 students at the University of Louisiana Monroe to have their opportunity to go to the ballot and to share their opinion on this proposal. Obviously, it's passed through student government. It's passed through the committee. It's been signed by the president, vetted by the judiciary. But let's allow this to go through for the 8,000 students at ULM. So with full consideration of the board, I would like to motion to take item I3 individually and put it to a vote after.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All in favor of isolating J3 for its own separate vote, say aye.
Aye.
Is any opposed? Motion carries.
All right,
Your motion, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Basada.
One more time.
Right. I move that we would remove item 9 from the consent agenda.
I'll second Mr. Peterson's motion.
So we have a motion to separate J9 for a separate vote. All in favor of doing that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now y'all ruin my script.
Can we get some? I'm still a little confused. I was still.
We have 2 separate individual items.
So we'll vote on it individually. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll actually have 3 items to vote on,
Yeah.
consent items and the 2 items that will
Yeah.
be taken individually. Thank you all,
Thank you.
and all the best in your travels back to ULM and continuing the movement to bring success to your campus.
Mr. Chairman, if I can make just one correction.
Barry.
On my script, we have items identified as J. They should be I. but
Aye.
That is my error.
I'm sorry. Okay, so,
Which item are we on? I'm sorry.
go ahead. You have a question or comment? Another?
When we get to item 9,
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any comments from the public? Okay, being none, and I don't believe any, further clarifications. May I have a motion and a second to approve items I, 1, 2, 4, and 5?
so moved.
Second by Drew Brown. One, two, four, five, 8. That's correct. We can add 8 also in
Yeah,
there.
so moved.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we have under consideration I3, which concerns ULM and the fees we just discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Yes. I9. Any
I have a-
comments?
Yes. Is there any sense of the amount of impact on the on students of the proposals that are being brought forward? Maybe a better way to say it would be, what's the average percent increase in, I know the limit is 10%, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In the rise, but on average, what are folks bringing forward? 10%?
Not necessarily. Some schools, I think, are planning to assess 3.5%,
Mm-hmm.
and others very close to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Just one comment. The act requires students to be notified well in advance of assessing the fee. And that's one reason why we wanted to have the committee today, to allow the universities to communicate that increase to their students and their potential students of the increase.
So whatever happens today, provided that the committee approves it, it's all systems go then.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
I think the way it breaks out is the board is authorizing universities to increase their differential tuition and fees up to 10% if they comply with the act. The committee's responsibility is to determine whether the individual plans comply with the act. That includes notice to students, hardship waivers, being under 10% as required by the act. All those provisions are there, and the institutions need to comply with that, and they would be demonstrating that to the committee after this meeting.
And the full board would, in a future meeting, hear the result of what schools decided to do.
Yes, sir. The committee would report to the board at the next scheduled meeting what the results were.
It'll be reflected in our minutes. And Mr. Peterson, you certainly are welcome to submit and attend that committee meeting.
Mr. Mesh, the act authorizes up to 10% over 2 years, correct?
That's correct. That's right.
And so if campuses don't do the 10% the first year, it's quite possible we're here again next year, potentially consider another increase. Is that right?
Yes, sir. So the act was created last year, and no institution increased their tuition fees last year, or I should say, the year immediate after the act was passed, plus this year. So they have the ability to increase it by 10% over that 2-year period. After the 2-year period expires, which is 26, then they would be eligible to increase again over the next 2-year period, whatever way they would want to. It could be 5, it could be 3, and then hopefully we would have those conversations about what needs the institutions would have in those years.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Mesh, can you tell us, just for a point of information, when was the last time our universities had the authority, the opportunity to raise their?
So there were two granted authorities. First was tuition, regular tuition. I believe that was 2017.
16.
And then fees, the last year was 2020. So it's been about 5 years. Just there's been significant inflation, and institutions are looking for ways to balance their budgets. And this would be a way that would help. Wouldn't completely balance their budgets, but it could mitigate some of those deficits that we're trying to overcome.
Mr. Busada, if I could add, throughout the legislative process and for everyone's benefit, the original bill that was filed would have granted tuition and fee autonomy to all of our systems, which would be more in line with, I think we're only one of 2 states that actually requires legislative action in order to authorize an increase in tuition and fees. Throughout the legislative process, there were hearings on both sides, House and Senate, and the result was that it would be limited in terms of the tuition, any tuition increase to high-cost programs. And then on the fee side, and it could not exceed 10%. And there would be a 2-year period that fee would be in effect. So the act that we are attempting to bring for your consideration today went through that legislative process, as well as next February, any action that's taken will be reported to the legislature for their consideration. So each year or every other year, if there are increases, we will have to notify the legislature of any increases. LSU has already gone forward with their and approved their campuses. And from what we've seen from our schools, it will be somewhat consistent with what the other one of the other higher ed systems is doing. The approach, which is sort of a balanced approach between a slight increase in fees and in tuition. So I hope that at least helps with some context about what's transpired to get us here to today.
Mr. Gallo, was it LSU went to full 10%?
They have sort of a balanced, mixed approach, but over the 2 years, it would come pretty close to 10%.
Thank you.
And I would like to add, and Mr. Busada, if you don't mind.
Please.
The topic of tuition and fee increases is always something I think we need to be extremely thorough and steadfast in evaluating. We recognize the challenging fiscal conditions that many of our universities are currently experiencing, and we know that fiscal health supports proper and adequate successful delivery of an experience that our students are all subscribed to. I would absolutely say that some universities are having to deal with the aftermath of storms, the lagging effect that creates. I know that in working with Mr. Mesh and President Gallo, that there's been an ongoing dialogue with all campuses to find ways to improve our fiscal expenditures, to favor alignment with efficiency. And there's been a consistent effort to support growing enrollment. I want to commend some of you who have done a very good job of increasing enrollment and changing the trend, and knowing that the climate to do that is very difficult. We understand that the tuition and fee change that's presented today and the consideration before us is not the first step we've taken to bring fiscal health and success. And I realize that, if we don't give them the ability to right-size their income statement, to get the revenue stream necessary to drive the product experience and experience of their students to the level that they're committed to bringing, that we're impairing their ability to be successful. I am not generally an advocate of increasing costs when it's not needed, but I think we can all see many, many signs, I can see that there have been consistent ongoing efforts to bring success to the fiscal health of the universities. And I would say that this is probably a step that we all will assume is necessary and know that it wasn't the first step towards bringing positive outcomes to the fiscal health of the university. So I realize again that anytime we bring this, it creates good dialogue, good discussion. I think for us as a board, I know that President Gallo and his team and all of the presidents and their teams have been working very diligently through the discussions centered around supporting their proposition to make those changes that will be presented today to the committee. And I'm comfortable that we have been diligent, we've been very deliberate, and that the vetting process is going to bring the best outcome. So again, I want to thank everyone for your efforts, and hopefully this is going to be a positive, and it'll bring all of you to a much more competitive and successful position. Thank you. Barry.
Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Salter.
No, sir. They've already given, correct. They've given the authority to go up to 10%. So, correct. That is correct.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'd like a motion and a second for approval of I-9, which would authorize the fee and tuition increases up to 10% as provided by Act 790 of the 2024 legislative session, and further approve the special committee to receive and authorize tuition and fee changes presented by individual campuses for increase for compliance prior to imposition and implementation of the fee. Okay, we had Dr. Noble, and who had the second? I was down there. Salter. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Peterson opposed. Motion carries with one in opposition. All right. With no further business, that would conclude the business of this committee, and personnel is next.
Thank you, Mr. Basada. Chair Salim, if you would mind addressing the Personnel Committee items at this time.
Provide an overview of today's agenda for those. Thank you. The consent items have been reviewed by the staff and are recommended for approval. Do we have any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Any discussions? If not, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve.
Mr. Salim, you moved on pretty quick. I just want to make a comment. I appreciate the level of transparency from Southeastern in their search process to fill the position that Dr. Wright's taken over. So, you know, in my 5 years on the board, I'm not sure we've seen the supporting documentation to show what the search process consisted of, how many players were involved, and I really appreciate that that information.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Basada, second. By Mr. Salters and Mr. Evans. Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is passed, and items J1 through J4 have been approved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Salim. Following this meeting, we'll have a special committee meeting on tuition and fees. Certainly want to thank Mr. Salim for chairing that meeting, that committee, and as well, those members that are serving upon adjournment of today's business. President Gallo, if you would, please present your report at this time.
Ms. Neal has something.
Looking forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, members of the board. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Wright. During the process, which Supervisor Stevens mentioned, it was an extremely thorough process, but it also allowed me as president to spend a lot of time with our top candidates. And one of the things that was most impressive to me about Dr. Wright is, in addition to his deep resume, his proven years of experience, his time as highly impactful faculty member in multiple institutions of higher education, the thing that inspired me most is his passion for students. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not witnessing his deep engagement with the Office of Student Engagement. Dr. Wright understands that academic success has everything to do with the holistic success of the student. If ever you're on this campus of Southeastern Louisiana University, you will not only see Dr. Wright serving in his leadership role within his division, you will see him at tailgates, athletic events, any and every opportunity to engage with students. And that's what makes our mission possible. So it's my honor to introduce to you Dr. Jeffrey Wright.
Chair Romero, members of the board, President Gallo, and President Wainwright, thank you for this appointment. I am truly honored to have the opportunity to expand my service to an institution and to a system that has invested so much in my own professional development, including but not limited to the ULS Management and Leadership Institute. It's wonderful to be among several leaders on my campus that have taken part in that program, and that has given us a common framework as we seek to move the university and our individual areas forward. Per Dr. Wainwright's point, I think one of the most beneficial parts of that program, my cohort mate at that time was our then Dean of Students. And I was already student-centered, but having a year-long process to really engage with the Dean of Students and the issues confronted in that office have made me a better leader on the academic affairs side as well. So I want to thank all of you for that, and I look forward to the growth of the college and the entire university as we continue to celebrate our centennial year. Thank you.
So Dr. Wright, was your cohort the best cohort in the history of ML&I?
All of them are great, sir.
I'm sorry, I interrupted the applause. Let's give him a round of applause, please. All right. Board members were emailed campus personnel actions. Staff has reviewed all of the requests and recommends approval. Mr. Chairman, we need a motion and a second to approve those personnel actions.
Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Davidson, second by Supervisor Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Earlier this month, Chair Romero appointed the ULM Presidential Search Committee. While we are still in the early stages of the search, we have already begun work on key elements, including the timeline, advertisement, and the ULM presidential profile. The committee's inaugural meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 11th at 1:00 p.m. on ULM's campus. Just a few updates. Although we experienced the snowstorm here in southern Louisiana, not everyone was able to travel. Our student government president and Dr. Calais were able to make it to Washington. The students had a valuable opportunity to meet with Louisiana legislators, with our congressional delegation and others, and they engaged in meaningful discussions about higher ed and their campuses. I don't know if Supervisor Brown wants to add anything from the student president perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great trip. It was a little unorthodox this year. We were expecting about 38 student body presidents, and come Thursday, there were 7 of us. So for the folks that were there, we had some great FaceTime with the representatives and the senators. We had the unique opportunity to actually meet with most of the senators. I think the only one we did not have a chance to sit down with formally was the Speaker of the House, which is understandable because he is the Speaker of the House. But by far and away, the most interesting conversation we were able to have was with Senator Bill Cassidy, who, as we all know, is the chairman of the Senate Help Committee, which is Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. So being able to sit down at the conference table with one of the most powerful figures in educational policy for the nation was a great experience. He had a lot of great insight to where Pell Grants are going, to where student affordability is going, and it was a very unique opportunity. Additionally, of course, we had DC Mardi Gras that weekend, so it was a great opportunity. There was a lot of university presidents there. A lot of the UL system members got to go to a lot of hospitality suites to the events, and we got to do a lot of professional networking. It was a fantastic opportunity for myself, so grateful for everybody who supported me there. We had some system office representatives who helped me get into some places. I was actually President Rick Gallo for the entire weekend. Surprisingly, if you walk into a room and say, "I'm President Rick Gallo and this is my wife," you can pretty much get in anywhere you want to. So thank you, Rick Gallo, for allowing me to use your name for the weekend.
Always honored, Mr. President, always honored.
You might have been trespassed for next year.
I'd also like to talk about, we look forward to the upcoming UL System Academic Summit. This year will be hosted by Nichols State University on April 10th and 11th. This annual event celebrates the academic excellence, research, and creative achievements of students and faculty across our system. It provides a platform for collaboration, innovation, and the exchange of ideas that strengthen our institutions. I'd certainly like to encourage participation by the public and certainly for our Board of Supervisors members. We look forward to highlighting the incredible work being done by our students and our faculty. As many of you know, the 8th annual For Our Future Conference will be held here in Baton Rouge on March 26th through 28th. This year's pre-conference event will be Future Forward, State of the State. This event will focus on the future of Louisiana and the role public post-secondary education can and should play to ensure success. We will hear from many of our state and higher ed leaders as well as business and industry partners. As for the conference topics, we are returning to the basics, strengthening our core. We will hear from faculty, staff, and partners on teaching, research, service, and talent development. Hopefully you all will be able to attend at least part or all of our conference. Please reach out to Carol if you have, if your schedule allows you to participate. ULS Day has been scheduled for May 5th at the legislature. We look forward to showcasing the best and brightest from across our institutions. It'll be another opportunity to celebrate the great work of our faculty, staff, and students, and sharing that with our legislature. We look forward to your participation, and please save the date, Cinco de Mayo, May the 5th, for ULS Day at the Capitol. Finally, I'd like to just commend our staff, starting with Carol and Ann and Dr. Norris, everyone who's participated in moving the technology of our board operation forward. We've adopted the use of a new platform on board. And for those of you who've taken advantage of following along on your iPads today, it is really not just the future of technology, it's the present of technology, and certainly is in line with how progressive boards are approaching the sharing of information and having technology at your fingertips. So again, I want to celebrate and commend all of our ULS team for your respective parts in making this platform available, and look forward to further integration of it as we go forward. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, President Gallo. I want to take a few minutes to update the board on the work of the ULS Healthcare Task Force. They met for a second time last week. And again, thanks for the board members and staff who are part of this important work. Task Force members discussed a strategic plan draft to address Louisiana's nursing crisis and health care workforce strategies. The goal is to submit a final plan to Governor Landry by March 28th. The task force also reviewed a website and AI navigator currently under development that will clearly and simply illustrate various in-demand career pathways available in the healthcare sector in Louisiana. I want to remind all of you that for each year, we're required to file an annual financial disclosure statement. And for calendar year 24, those disclosures are due to the Board of Ethics by May 15th. Carol will be emailing the form instructions and submission details to each of you this week. The next board meeting is scheduled for April 24th in Baton Rouge. I would also like to just formally designate the special committee that will be meeting today. Again, chair will be Mr. Salim. The members serving on the committee are Mr. Brown, Mr. Basada, Ms. Pierre, and Mr. Stevens. There's no other business to be heard by this board today. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Salter, second by Mr. Brown. All in favor? We stand adjourned. Lunch is in the room 190, and we'll convene into room 155 to discuss campus plans post that. Thank you again.